Welcome to the Book Flood Podcast. I am your host, Tom Nixon. My guest this week is Diana Farid. Diana is an award winning author and poet. Her picture book, When You Breathe, was a 2021 National Council of Teachers of English Notable Poetry Book and a 2022 Eureka Gold Award winner for nonfiction. Her novel in verse, Wave, was a 2022 School Library Journal Best Middle Grade Book, the Sybil's Award winner for novel in verse, a Middle East Book Award honoree, a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection, a Golden Poppy Award finalist, and a Northern California Book Award nominee. Her latest picture book, The Light of Home, has been called incredibly powerful and beautifully told. Her debut board book, Already All the Love, an Amazon editor's pick and #1 new release, is praised as an excellent choice for early readers. Welcome, Diana.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, absolutely. Why don't we get started with talking about your career trajectory? How did you get to where you're at today?
Well, it wasn't in my introduction, but I'm also a physician, and I was caring for patients. I also trained to take care of kids. I'm a family medicine doc by training. So, in my line of work, I cared for kids and mothers. And when I also became a mother, I became much more aware of children's literature
Mm.
and its impact. And I didn't see some of the stuff I wanted to see. And one of my motivations in writing for children, or those who are young at heart, I like to say, um, was that. Um, the other reason, or the other way I kind of got into this space of writing, is that I'm really passionate about finding ways that help the world um, have more safety and security and peace and love in it.
Right.
And I was a peace and conflict studies major in university. I had the opportunity to do a few things in other countries, and I felt like I saw the power of story in how we see one another and how we relate to one another and how we connect to one another.
Mm.
And I saw the power of story impact how people even understand their own health. And so I got into a little bit of the line of work of storytelling for health, and got into filmmaking, and the storytelling side of my professional life also made its way into writing, both poetry and children's literature. So those two things kind of merged into where I am now.
Mm. So you mentioned that you're a medical doctor. Well, now, as I understand it, you're an associate professor of medicine at Stanford,
That's right.
which is, you're not my local medical doctor, I get what I'm saying. So, how are you able to devote yourself to being a medical doctor and a children's book author all at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I get asked that quite a bit, and it makes complete sense, how somebody or why somebody maybe would do both of those things. The the one of the answers is that I I can't not write. I have noticed that it's one of the ways I breathe. It's one of the ways that I um, feel like I'm living. And I've also learned that I really find a lot of joy and sense of connection and service in getting to interact with a patient and help them find an answer to their symptoms or feel better or navigate our really complicated medical care system. So in some ways I can't help but do both. That's the kind of philosophical and motivating factor behind it.
Right.
The very practical answer is that I don't practice medicine for all of my professional hours. I have purposefully decided to do that in a limited manner so that I can also focus on writing. To me, they are not, a lot of people will say, how do you wear those different hats? Or I wear these different hats. And I don't see it that way. I really see it as a way that I'm manifesting the things that I want to manifest. And so I have created a lifestyle or life whereby I make time to do both of those things. And that involves kind of letting go of some things on the medical professional side in terms of time devoted so that I can also write. I see it as a form of healthcare practice, actually, and both of them. And so I make time for them. So those are some of the ways that I do it. Yeah.
Was being an author always part of the plan for you? Is this something that you envisioned even as a little child?
So it's not something I envisioned, but interestingly, I wrote. It's and I mainly wrote poetry. Up until a certain age, it is how I expressed myself, and I didn't really even know it was poetry, I guess. I think I liked writing things that sounded like songs, that had a rhythm or a rhyme to it. It was how I processed my life experiences. And so at a young age, I did not think of it as a profession, as something that I would pursue professionally, or devote a lot of my time to per se. But looking back, I can see that it was something that I just did. And I can see it was a way that I breathed, it was a way that I expressed myself. And so it was always a part of me. And then as high school went on and college began, I noticed that I really enjoyed studying certain forms of literature and writing about them. And so, I didn't study, I studied science, of course. I went to med school, but I majored in a field that involved a lot of processing and thinking about ethics and sociology and anthropology and writing. And so I knew it was something I could do. But I didn't really think about writing in the way that I am now until about, probably seriously until about 15 years ago. Prior to that, I had thought more about screenwriting, things that were more multimedia oriented. And I wrote poetry, but not necessarily with the thought of publishing it. So, yeah, it really was a journey.
So you mentioned you were a peace and justice major in university?
I was, so officially the title was Peace and Conflict Studies. And it was an offering at UC Berkeley. I believe the major still exists. At the time, it was its own department. I don't think it's its own department now. And yeah, we studied everything from, defining conflict to how does one address conflict, why why wars happen, how wars could maybe not happen. To me, that was so fundamental to health as well. I mean, it was the most basic form of us either causing suffering or not,
Mm.
that I really wanted to know it on that level, even though I had my eye on med school. I felt like they were one and the same in a lot of ways. So, yeah, that's what I studied.
I think some of our listeners would be surprised that you can major in something like that and yet go on to medical school.
Yes. And that's something that I speak about, or don't necessarily directly speak about, but it certainly comes up when I do my school visits, because it's not something that's necessarily thought about. Um, and yet it's not uncommon at all. There are a number of folks that have studied all kinds of fields, professional athletes, professional artists, architects, English majors, computer science majors that end up applying to and getting into medical school. And it only adds to the diversity of backgrounds that
Mm.
and that are in that field. And it's not something that, as far as I know, that even med school admissions folks shy away from. I think they often look for that because it creates a really lovely life background to what you bring to the practice of medicine as well. Um, and it's also an indication that I think it's so easy, and I see this when I take care of patients at Stanford, because my students are my patients are Stanford students, but also in raising my own children and in doing school visits. It's so easy for many of us to think that we have to only have one profession or one passion in life, and
Mm.
that's just not the reality. I think a lot of people have multiple passions and ways that they want to contribute to the world. And I think it's nice to know that that's okay and actually quite common and normal. Um, as I've had a number of students, middle schoolers and high schoolers say, I didn't know you could be a doctor and a writer. And thankfully, I can be one living example of that. Although, of course, we know through the centuries, there have been so many of those, right? From William Carlos Williams to Abraham Verghese. So, um, yeah.
So, where do you see your writing career going?
I see it continuing. I see it no matter what. Uh, you know, I see it as I'm going to continue to write.
Hmm.
And the aftermath of that is not something I have a whole lot of control over, is one of the things I've learned. Um, one hopes that an editor will like what you write. One hopes that the publishing house will support and promote whatever they've acquired from you. One hopes that readers will connect and see themselves in the books. Um, but ultimately, I know at the very basic level that I'm going to continue to write, because it's one of the ways, like I mentioned, that I process. But beyond that, um, I'm going to continue to write because there are stories that haven't necessarily been told that I want to tell, or ways to tell them that haven't been done in that particular way. And so if I'm fortunate enough to have those other steps happen, where an editor likes it and a publishing house likes it and folks connect to it, my ultimate goal would be that people see themselves in some way in the stories, even if they don't fully recognize the environment or the cultural background, or even if they do, um, that they feel less alone, that they feel empowered, that they too can find ways to manifest their own beauty and to live in the world in a way that sees delight and brings joy and hopefully promotes peace and health in that way. And so when I do get those notes um, it's interesting. In the last several weeks, almost once a week now, I've received a note from a teacher, um, letting me know that their students felt so moved by WAVE in particular. A teacher a few weeks ago in Florida reached out and said to me that her students are now considering, they're in the process of writing their own slam poetry,
Oh,
that
nice.
they want to connect with hospital patients and connect with them through reading and writing and poetry, that they want to connect with, they want to find a way to make cards and give cards to patients that are multilingual so that they feel less alone. I, that to me, if my writing career can continue to go in that direction, where the words that I decide to put down on a page um, motivate somebody to feel less alone and more connected, and wanting to also express themselves and show us the beauty that they have within them. Oh my gosh, that would be it. That's it. That would be amazing. So, want it to keep going. It's going to keep happening, and I'm hoping that it just continues to connect with people.
Yeah, with a writing career, certainly a lot of uncertainty because there's all those pieces that are outside your control,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
right.
Um, do you ever get pushback either from the medical side or for the writing side? You know, you're a doctor, you need to focus on that. You're an author, you need to focus on that.
That's such a great question. I think that there probably is that sentiment from the medical side.
Mm,
Um, there is a road in that particular profession that is known and well well trodden. It's it has been prescribed and it has been followed many times.
right.
It's a known path, particularly in both academic medicine and non-academic practice. And so I imagine that in that culture, I guess it's seen as something outside.
Mm,
But uh, I have learned that that opinion of one's path ultimately doesn't really matter. I mean, I know that when I'm in an exam room with a patient, um, they tell me, and I also just know from the interaction that I'm having that I am giving my all and doing my best to meet their needs. And when they look me in the eye and express to me that they feel heard and that they're happy with the plan that we're making together, I know I'm doing my doctor job well. And I don't need anybody else to validate that for me per se. But certainly, I guess on the outside, that pressure is there. Um, what's nice in some areas of academic medicine is that there is a movement towards increasingly recognizing the role of storytelling in the arts in both being a good doctor and in being a good citizen. So, here at Stanford, for example, and in a number of other places in the country, we're actively incorporating teaching medical students and residents how to use those skills to be happier in their practice and also be better doctors, and also, as ways of contributing to the world. So, that aspect of things is actually increasing and being more recognized. So, in that sense, I feel a little bit more support. In fact, I just got back last weekend. I was in Ohio recognizing medical students who were receiving an award for writing poetry and
oh,
sort of their um, study of humanism in medicine.
mm,
So, so yes and no is the answer to that. In terms of the writing, I don't think I've received any negativity with having that background per se.
mm,
um, uh, I I mean, I see it as a positive. I see it as I've had a window into so many experiences that um, that this profession provides that is incredibly unique and powerful. And so I don't see it that way, and I haven't really gotten any particular pushback. So yeah, yeah,
So over the weekend, I read your book, The Light of Home. Lovely book,
yeah.
lovely book.
Thank you.
Makes a powerful connection, I believe, to some of what is happening in the United States and other places right now. Uh, was that on purpose, or did that just seem to coincide?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Um, all of my books come from a really truthful and deep place in my heart, and The Light of Home is certainly one of them. The story behind that book is quite interesting. I was not agented at the time, and it was 6 months into the pandemic. And I sent that manuscript in via an open call, uh, having no sense of what would come of that. And it wasn't until days before Wave was released, and by that point, I had an agent, where when I heard back from the publishing company saying, we love this book and we want to publish it. So as many of your listeners may or may not know, picture books take years once they're acquired to finally get published. And so the timing of it was in no way speaking to anything specific purposefully uh, in world politics or culture. It was more, the story actually follows a little girl, a fictional girl named Noor, which in a number of languages means light.
Hmm.
And what I was hoping to do in that story was to tell the story of friends and family that I have had to escape violence and political and social and religious persecution. And some of my family often frequented for vacation an area of shore at the Caspian Sea. Uh, um, my family background is Persian, and so all of my family, um, prior to a generation or two ago, was from Iran.
Hmm.
And around the time of the 1979 Iranian Revolution, many of them had to escape or face death, quite honestly. And not to be so depressing, but um, confiscation of books, property, inability to go to school, inability to hold down a job, purely because of social or religious beliefs. So um, I wanted to tell the story about what happens when a child has to experience that,
Hmm.
and how do they find a sense of home. I was witnessing how people find a sense of home all around me, and I thought that was a really beautiful way of helping others feel less alone, allowing me to express what I have found in the healing power of the arts. And so Noor is somebody who loves to draw and paint. And in the middle of the night, she has to leave home and traverse on foot to another land, and misses home. And so it explores how she ends up finally finding that sense of home through her art, and what the power of that is.
Hmm.
It just so happened to be released in the fall of 2024, and and it wasn't particularly planned. I hope I'm answering your question,
No,
but that's
you
some of the
are.
background of it. Yeah.
It in many ways seem to have worked in your favor, but yeah, it does take a long time for picture books to be born, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because I've received in the school visits that I've done for the Light of Home, I've received feedback from a number of teachers and students, even if they're not familiar with that cultural background, saying that they really could that they either had empathy for that and not didn't necessarily experience that, but it kind of
Mm.
brought to light for them what that would feel like to have to suddenly leave. And then folks that did saying, I've never seen myself in this book, or I've never seen my cultural background in a book. Thank you for
Mm.
opening us up to that and making us feel seen. And that's an incredibly powerful thing to be told as a writer. Um, One particular school visit that I had decided to try to make it more fun and put drops of rose water into the hands of each of the students that was there. And there were probably 300 or 400 kids at this particular school visit in the auditorium. And um, that I'm sure that the teachers and staff were not excited about me making everybody late to get back to class. Um, but they were so open and excited about it. And rose water is a really common ingredient in Persian pastries. I
Mm.
mean, other cultures too, for sure, but Persian pastries and other foods, dishes, and it smells so good. And so we did that. We put little drops on their hands as they were each walking out, and hundreds and hundreds of hands. And by the end, I was tired and couldn't keep track of hands and drops and all this stuff. Um, and then I get into the car and I look at the news, which I try not to do too often, but I looked at the news and I saw that a bunch of bombs were launched from Iran on the same day,
Mm.
around the same time that I was doing this rosewater drop giving. Uh, and I thought, wow, if any of these kids remember the beauty that can come from that culture, the deliciousness that exists in that culture, instead of this thing that's horrible and sad that's being relayed in the news.
Mm.
What a great contribution I can hope to give, I hope.
Mm.
But it was an incredible juxtaposition and very powerful, unplanned, of course, timing.
Mm.
But yeah.
Your illustrator for that book, Hoda Haddadi,
Yeah,
is Persian, lives in Iran.
she does.
Was that purposeful, semi-purposeful?
So I believe so. As many of your listeners may not know, when we write picture books and it's acquired by a trade publisher, we don't have a say necessarily, really at all, in who the illustrator ultimately is.
Right.
I have found that if we're lucky, we get asked our opinion. um, and I was lucky enough to get asked my opinion, but I have to give all the credit for finding Hoda to the publication team at Scholastic,
Mm.
the art director, the editor, and she is incredibly talented and well recognized and awarded for her work. So it's like no surprise that she was picked for a book like this. But yeah, it had nothing to do with me. But it was incredibly powerful for me that me living in the United States and somebody halfway around the world, um, from the place where my parents walked, where my grandparents walked, probably gone into stores or, stepped on sidewalks or visited parks that they too frequented, to have us brought together in this book in that way was incredibly emotional and powerful for me. And so I'm really thankful that they brought us together in that way. And for her, for both of us, there's a really powerful undercurrent in the light of home, which is the beauty and the power of the voice of women. And as some of your listeners may or may not know, in that country right now, women are treated horrifically and girls are treated horrifically. And so to have us brought together in a way to enlighten or shine a light on the beauty and power of women was also particularly moving and meaningful for us. So
What are you working on now?
I just finished my next novel in verse,
Oh.
and we're going to see if, like I mentioned before, we're going to see if an editor likes it. so that just happened, and that I spent about the last year and a half working very hard on that. And that is a magical realism book that follows a dancer. And so we'll see. And then really actively right now, I'm working on some picture books. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have anything coming out soon, or?
Not right now, not that's announced or in the works. But my book, Already All the Love, came out in December. And I'm very excited that that's out in the world. And that's my latest one. And it's a board book. It's my first board book. So nothing on the very short horizon.
Is there a book or a series of books from your childhood that still resonates with you?
So I love that you're asking this, and also I must be completely honest. And I'm a little bit worried that you're asking this. And the reason is that, and I think it's important for listeners to know this as well. As a young child, I was quite intimidated by traditional prose books that I was presented. And I feel like it's only been within the last 10 years that I really became acutely aware of this. And it's because of I get asked questions like this.
Right.
The first words I was really interested in consuming were the words in liner notes of music albums and cassette tapes, even as a really young girl. And I dug up in preparation for this the books that I was into up until about ninth grade. And in ninth grade, I really got much more interested in reading. But before that, if you will believe it, this is literally one of the books that I read and looked at over and over again. And it is an album remake. It's literally a 45 with,
and for you young kids, a 45
yeah.
is a small record that we used to be able to play once upon a time.
And if you look at the back, Tom, you'll see I just noticed this before we got on our conversation. See the pictures, hear the record, read the book. So I had one of those record players that had a lid that you can close, and then it had, well, again, this was when I was quite young, and then it had one of these latches and then a handle, and you could carry it like a lunchbox.
Right.
It was blue. I think it had rainbows on it. I don't remember for sure, but anyways, and so I would play this Hobbit, but obviously not, the original, but based on it, and then read along with the words. And to me, this is just evidence that from a really young age, I really enjoyed stories and reading, but combine with the
Mm.
visual and the auditory. And so I think that if I was growing up today, that I would really gravitate towards graphic novels or novels in verse as sort of my
Right.
first um, buy-in. So this is the stuff I remember and cherish from my youngest age, like, really starting to read type stuff. Yeah. And I even have another one. I have Black Beauty, if you can believe it.
Oh, wow.
I know.
I
I mean,
remember,
these are
it's funny.
historic now.
Having you bring these out, I remember these for sure. The Hobbit, Black Beauty, uh, but I had somehow forgotten they existed in the world. But no,
Isn't that incredible? Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. I'm surprised I still have them, but my mom kept on to them, and now, it was $1.29 back then, apparently.
no.
So,
What are you reading now? Either for adults or for kids?
yeah. So I had the pleasure of meeting Ada Limon at the NCTE in November. And so I'm reading her You Are Here, um, which is a compilation actually. And I'm really reading a lot of poetry right now.
Mm.
The other book that I'm reading is a new translation of Rumi poetry um, by oh, I'm forgetting her last name. I should pull it out. I think it's Haza or Lisa, but it's called Gold. So I'm reading a lot of poetry these days.
Mm. Well, I want to thank you so much, Diana, for coming on the podcast. I'd like to ask our followers and potential followers, please like, subscribe, and share. And again, thank you, Diana. This was great.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a great joy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.